Hi, I've got two previous videos that some of you may have seen. If not, go have a look. One is how to do the summed receiver input on a Paris board using, in that example, an FR Sky 4-channel receiver, and you just put a link in it and you just use one lead out of it into the Paris board and you get all 8 channels being fed in, including the auxiliary channels. And another video you may have seen is how to do the pitch override on the new Scarab brushless gimbal, where I took the pitch override input channel from the Scarab, from the Paris Alexmos gimbal controller, and plugged it into an output of my receiver. Now, in that case, I used a full 8-channel receiver and I was using the full wiring in. But if you had the summed input, you of course wouldn't have that output to use. So I've come up with a little cheat that I thought I'd show you. So you can still use, scrolling down to it, the summed input and the little 4-channel receiver, the FR Sky one, and use the Paris board to do the pitch override. And I've come up with a little cheat, and it uses the servo tilt section. Now, by default, this is actually going to have be trying to drive the gimbal itself, which we don't want the Paris board to do. We want the gimbal controller to drive the gimbal. What we just want is that auxiliary channel override. But we can actually fool the code into doing it. And we can do it because of two things. First thing, in version 2.2, we've got this. Define tilt pitch auxiliary channel 3, auxiliary channel to overwrite cam pitch. Comment to disable. Alright, so we leave that defined. So that means that channel 7 from our radio is going to be a pitch override channel. So it still gets set up the same way I did it in the other video. Different radios are going to be different, so I'm not going to cover that. But basically, if you watch the other video, I had a switch to give me up, down, up, center, and down, and then I had a pot, or now I've got a slider to be a override of that as well. All right, so that allows the radio to do the input to the Paris board. But the trouble is, the Paris board's still going to try, as you tilt the Paris board, to move the gimbal as well, which is a bit of a problem. We don't want that to happen. But luckily there's this line here, define tilt pitch proportion, which is how much tilt, pitch tilt we want the Paris board to output. And at the moment, default, it's set to 10. But if we set that to 0, the Paris board won't itself try and control the gimbal. But the auxiliary channel output from aux3 will still work to that gimbal output. So we simply wire the pitch control lead of the gimbal controller into the pitch output of the Paris board and set that to 0 and make sure the aux3 is controlling it, and that it's working. As an extra couple of features, we've got this here. The tilt pitch minimum and tilt pitch maximum. So we can actually use those two numbers to set how far down we want that control to go and how far up we want that control to go. And the tilt pitch middle here at 1500 lets us then set our center point. So that's the sub trim and the end points in the radio are covered here. So on your radio, in the GUI, you still set the standard 1095, 1500, 1905 swings for aux3 channel. But the actual tuning of the gimbal happens in that section there. So as long as you've got the proportion set to 0 and you've got the aux3 channel as the override, that then makes the pitch output of the Paris board work exactly the same as if you were plugging into that the equivalent channel on your receiver. But of course, physically that channel doesn't exist. So there's a lovely little workaround, really simple, just done in code to allow you to still do the pitch override when you've got a summed input fed into your Paris controller. See you guys online.